All righty. Now, welcome to another virtual event with Neighbors on Call. I'm Susan Blunt, and I think I'm still here on the screen somewhere. I'm Susan Blunt, one of the directors, and Becca Zirkin, our other directors here tonight too. Thank you for coming. I'm going to just do one more little thingy here. There's Steve Sunshine. Thanks for coming tonight to get to know Dr. Kimberly Hardy, and thank you to Dr. Hardy for taking time out of her busy campaign schedule and her real life, her regular life, to talk to us. First, we are going to now ask everybody to turn off your video because that helps with the network bandwidth issues. So stop your video. On the bottom row, there are control buttons, and you can click on stop video, please, if you don't mind. There you go. And in the top right corner, there's a toggle switch that helps you go either from see speaker view or the gallery view. And during this presentation, the speaker view is generally the best option for you in the audience there. Okay, Neighbors on Call, or NOC, is an all-volunteer group laser focused on flipping at least one chamber of the North Carolina legislature. This fall, we're going strong thanks to all our amazing volunteers. You folks is who I mean by that, you wonderful volunteers. So far, you all have committed to over 800 phone bank shifts in September and October. It's definitely all hands on deck time, so if you haven't yet, please sign up for 2 September phone banks and 3 in October. You can do that on our website at neighborsoncall.org. Now, if you're feeling a little uncomfortable or unsure about phone banking, let me encourage you to try out our buddy option. A lot of us are doing that these days, and the feedback has been really good and helpful. So now there are 5 critical races for the North Carolina House that NOC is focusing on. We don't need to tell you the urgency of this work or remind you that this in particular is a critical time to reach voters. Think about it, mail-in voting has already begun and early voting starts on October 15th. So we are now in the midst of it all. Now, although tonight's program is not about voting questions per se, we don't want to miss this opportunity to dispel one particular myth about mail-in ballots that keeps floating around. So here you go, here's the myth. That if you get an absentee ballot but decide not to use it, that you have to bring the unused ballot with you to the polls. And that if you don't, you'll have to vote a provisional ballot. This is not true. Let me just make it clear. This is not true. Here's the fact that per the Board of Elections, if you don't use your mail-in ballot, you just destroy it. You do not need to bring it with you to the polling site. Okay? Now, our program tonight will end around 7:15-ish, but some of the NOC team plans to hang out for an after Zoom. So we hope you will feel free to stick around and chat with us and ask any questions you may have about phone banking. Thanks. Turn it over to Becca.
Hi, everybody. Dr. Hardy, we're so glad you're here tonight. Welcome and thank you. Our first phone bank with you is tomorrow. And so we want to take this time to get to know you better so we can talk about you confidently and passionately on the phone. And first, I just want to make one note to our phone bankers about this, which is you will almost certainly not be asked about specific policy platforms in a phone bank. So don't worry about taking notes or memorizing policy details. It's just important that we convey genuine excitement about Dr. Hardy, and that's what we're going to walk away with tonight. If we don't already feel that, and I'm sure we will very, very soon. And she's a wonderful candidate. And if you run across a very unusual situation where a voter is asking you for specifics and you don't know the answer, that's okay. You just say that you'll have the campaign call them back about it. That doesn't have to be our role. Dr. Hardy's running for House District 43 in Cumberland County. And this district used to lean very Democratic, but last year it was redrawn. It became 20 points less favorable than it was before. So it's basically a new district and a very competitive district. And in March, Dr. Hardy defeated a 7-term incumbent, Elmer Floyd, in the Democratic primary. So this is a very unique race. Brand new district lines, very competitive, and no incumbent. It is currently a Democratic House seat, and so we really need to keep it that way. And we'll also be boosting Democrats up the ballot, including State Senator Kirk DeVere, who represents most of that House district. He won by a very narrow margin in 2018, and so we really need him to keep that seat. So let's get to know Dr. Hardy, and then we're going to fight like hell for her to win. Welcome, Dr. Hardy.
Thank you so much. I am super excited to be here, and I would love to answer any questions anyone has. And I don't know if you want me to launch into something, or if you want me to do it in a more tailored way. But actually, I'm going to start by saying thank you all so much for being willing to do this to help out the campaign. This really is so important, especially since we can't go out and talk to voters directly right now because of the COVID pandemic. So the phase that we're in North Carolina, we are not able to go out. The Democrats are not going out. Some Republicans are, which is not even really in their wheelhouse, but they think they have an advantage right now. But they don't when we have amazing volunteers like you who are calling directly into the homes and safely engaging with the voters. So happy to be here.
Wonderful.
That's great. Maybe you could start out by telling us why you decided to run.
Well, so like you said, I had a primary. We had a more conservative member of the Democratic caucus for 12 years. We just thought it was time for him to, it really was less about him and more about the seat, right? Because we needed the House to be a bit more progressive. They were, he voted in favor of HB2, which is what nationally North Carolina became known as the bathroom bill, which was an absolutely horrific piece of legislation that, and it was the bathroom bill because they weren't letting people who were transgender use the public facilities of their gender identification. They wanted it for gender at birth. And so, we wound up having boycotts and all types of things. And we became a national embarrassment. And the incumbent voted in support of that, voted in support of, we could go ad infinitum at things that he did not do that were helping the district or the folks in North Carolina. And then on the anniversary of 9/11 last year, the state had put forth a budget, the governor vetoed it, and because it didn't expand Medicaid, it didn't raise teacher pay sufficiently, and there was just nothing good about this budget if you are a left-leaning progressive person. And so they have a majority in the House, but not a super majority anymore because of the midterms. But on the anniversary of 9/11, the speaker said, oh, listen, we are not going to take up a vote on this budget. They had tried everything. Scheduling the vote when they knew that people in the House who had cancer were having cancer treatments, so that they could do it while they weren't there, and people are leaving their doctor's appointments to get there. And then they'd get there and they wouldn't call the vote because they knew they couldn't do it. So on 9/11, they promised that they were not going to, take this vote up, and they did it anyway. They did it while all the Democrats were out, and we now have the best shero in the world in Deb Butler, who made history on the floor, who said, I will not yield, Mr. Speaker. And when you see that they take a day that is a national day of mourning and remembrance, and they use it for political trickery, I just thought, this is shameful, and we are so much better than this. And so I knew it was time to throw my hat in the ring. As a social worker, I've been encouraging my students for years to say, and tell them, you guys have to run for office. If you want to make meaningful change at a level that impacts people at a greater level, greater number, you got to do it at the policy level. And so I thought, well, this is an opportunity to lead by example. And it has actually gotten a lot of the students involved in the campaign, and they're much more politically aware now, because it matters when you know the candidate. You can touch the candidate, like, oh, I know that person, and I know, because people say, why would you want to get into shady politics, but now my students can go, I know her and she's not shady. So now it's like, wait, if we put the right people in there, then maybe we can have an elected office, people in elected office who care about us, and we know that because we know her. And so, so that's what I wanted to do. I ran because I knew that we could do better, In my district, I ran because I knew we could do better in the state. And all of my social work training has prepared me for being in the legislature and helping to make policy change for the state of North Carolina. I hope that answered it.
No, that's great. That's
Okay, good. Others? Anybody else?
Well, we have a couple questions, then we're going to turn it over to the Q&A from all the participants, and I know they'll have amazing questions for you.
Okay.
Before we do that, would you mind just telling us a little bit about the district? Help us get to know who will be calling.
So, okay, so like you said, the district used to be very safely blue. It was very small. It was largely African American, and it was largely just Fayetteville. In December, when we got in trouble as a state again for gerrymandering and the lines were redrawn, my district grew exponentially. It is huge now, and it is much more demographically diverse, which I actually like, because I think when you have a sort of myopic view of the state because your district is so homogenous, and that's blue or red, you know, if all you have to think about is the people in your little small purview, that then you don't consider how your legislative decisions affect people in spaces outside of that. And so I like that my district looks very much like the state now. So there is a huge rural piece of it. Stedman and Wade over east of the river. So we're about an hour south of Raleigh. And so we have an urban space in Fayetteville, but it's not Raleigh urban or Charlotte urban, you know? And so, but there is an urban space there. And then further up North Fayetteville into a town called Linden, which is where I live, is a little bit more suburbs tending toward rural. So it's gotten much bigger. It's become much more racially diverse. It's become more geographically diverse. And so you could be calling any number of people, and some of the issues that are impacting the folks here. So things that are impacting everyone, regardless of district, are things like teacher pay. We have done a terrible job with our teacher pay. We have done a terrible job with our teacher pay. And I've been a school social worker my whole career before I was a professor. And so I've worked shoulder to shoulder next to teachers in under-resourced public schools my whole life. And we can never pay those folks what they're worth, but we can do so much better by them than we're doing here in North Carolina. And so, I mean, we're like ranked 40th for teacher pay. We're not even paying at the national average. But then on top of that are issues that have been exacerbated by COVID. So in some spaces that are rural, but also low-income urban communities in my district, access to Wi-Fi, which is how people are working and kids are going to school right now, because all of our schools in Cumberland County are online this semester. We have had to outfit school buses as large mobile hotspots and park them in various locations around the district so that kids can have access to broadband, just so that they can log into school. We have access issues in terms of the hardware. So a lot of kids had to come and pick up a laptop, but you can only get one. And what if there are two kids in the home who both need that, you know? So, I mean, there's a lot of challenges around the school piece. And then once we get back in the buildings, the infrastructure of the schools, many of the schools, is pretty poor, pretty old now. And we need to take up some issues on how to outfit our schools so that they are really poised to help our children become 21st century learners and leaders. Some other things here, of course, Medicaid expansion is huge across the state. I mean, because we are a donor state, one of 12 states that has not expanded Medicaid, and we need to do that because 500,000 North Carolinians who work very hard every day have no employer-sponsored health care, and that was a problem for the governor and the Democrats in the state house before COVID, but during a global pandemic, it is that much more important now that we make sure that everyone is safe and healthy. So that's a huge issue here as well. In my particular district, there is an issue with something called Gen X, and it's an environmental issue. The Chemours plant has polluted the water and the surrounding land with all sorts of chemicals. The extent to which that damage has been done, we don't even know it yet. We probably won't know it for a generation, but holding them accountable for that is vitally important. We had another environmental issue here with coal ash from Duke Energy, and the incumbent that I ousted actually voted in support of them not having to pay for the cleanup. And so right now, if you have Duke Energy, you have a line item on your bill every month to help pay for that environmental disaster that was their fault. And if you're the one that isn't going to be a good corporate neighbor, then you should have to, take care of the cost of remediation and whatever other ancillary costs come from that, like medical expenses. Or with the Gen X issue, there was they put a water filter on the kitchen sinks of homes that have been impacted by the chemical spill in the water. And we were saying, like, what about dermal exposure? Like, it needs to be a whole home water filtration system, because you can't just use the kitchen sink for everything, right? So, and it should come at their own expense. So those are like the biggest issues that are issues here in our district. And then my own personal issue of hunger, homelessness, poverty, those are things that got me into social work in the first place, and things that never make the ballot. And so I thought, as a social worker, I can start putting things like that on the ballot. We have so many homeless veterans in the Fayetteville area, which should be an oxymoron. We shouldn't have anyone who was willing to put their life on the line to keep us safe and free, and now they are living on the street. That makes no sense to me at all. And so we can do better about issues of chronic homelessness for veterans and other residents of the city. So that's a personal issue of mine that I want to bring to the General Assembly as well. So if I'm elected, and I believe I will be, with you guys' help, I'll make the third social worker in the General Assembly, and maybe we can get something done in that regard.
We really, really want that to happen. Just one follow-up to what you just said. Can you please explain what you meant by us being a donor state for Medicaid?
Yes. So lots of people say, oh, I'm all for expanding Medicaid, but who's going to pay for it, right? Well, it's not going to cost you anything extra. This is paid for by tax dollars that you've already paid into the system. So what happens is that money that you've paid into the tax base, when the federal government is expanding Medicaid in other spaces, that money is going to help for that. So they call it being a donor state, because we're donating our tax dollars to helping expand Medicaid for people in other states, when we really need to bring that here. And people also say, well, how are we going to pay for it? And another thing is, if you have health insurance, you're going to have higher premiums when people who have no choice but to go to the emergency room because they don't have a primary care physician and they can't afford the copay at urgent care, when they go and they accumulate a really high bill for medical care, if they can't recoup those funds, the hospital can't recoup those funds, that's going to show up in your increased premiums of your insurance as well. So this is not a thing. It doesn't cost anybody anything extra to expand Medicaid, but it can help. It can help a whole lot more people feel really secure right now in particular.
Thank you so much for explaining about that.
Mm-hmm.
We have one more question for you, and then we'll turn it over to the chat. But
okay.
So what you may have noticed about our group is that demographically, we are mostly a white group of volunteers, and we mostly live in the Triangle and the surrounding areas. And so is there anything else that you would want us to be thoughtful about when we're on the phone with voters that we might unknowingly mess up?
That is the most forward-thinking, awesome question that I have ever seen. Ever. And I've no one's ever asked the question. So that is so good. You guys are so aware. I love that. So I thought about this. I asked my campaign manager about this. Is there anything they should know? And honestly, I don't think so. I mean, we do have some conservative folks who are also Democrats. If you're calling unaffiliated people, the unaffiliated voter tends to vote left. They tend to vote Democratic once they get in the booth, but they are on that line. And so some people will say, oh, if you're too progressive, that might scare them off. But they recently sent out, my opponent sent a mailer out about me, and and my face and AOC and Bernie Sanders, because those are spooky people because of the Green New Deal. And they said, oh, she's a liberal college professor, you know, and so I guess that's supposed to be scary. And I don't think in this district it necessarily is. I think I have always been someone who believes that that people can hear your heart. And so I think even if there is a thing that someone says that maybe could ruffle a feather or make someone wince, I think if people can hear that you're coming from a good place, that you mean well. I mean, as a clinician, I'm a pro at hearing what you said and separating it from how you said it. And I think most people are like that as well. So I think as long as you stay focused on the issues, that's the most important thing. And honestly, that's all this is about. There's fear mongering and race baiting and all that stuff to try to scare people's votes. And really what these are personal issues that have been politicized. Medicaid expansion is not political. Teacher pay raises, that's not political. You know, these are not political things. They are things that have been politicized, but there are things that affect us on a personal level. One of my students who was about to graduate in May from Fayetteville State got accepted to UNC Chapel Hill's advanced standing MSW program, went down to visit his mom in Georgia, and he had admitted to the hospital that morning, and by 6 o'clock he had passed away from COVID. That's personal for me. You know, I mean, that's not red meat at the base. These are people's lives. He left behind a wife and 3 little kids. He served 10 different tours in the military and was poised to go get his master's degree. That's a person who had a family and lives that will never be changed as a result of his impact as a social worker. That's not politics, that's personal. And so if that's what you guys keep people focused on, that it's not about fear, and that they shouldn't cast their ballot, this precious ballot, in a space of fear, but in hopefulness and in an understanding that as a state and as a country, we all get better when we just do things that take care of ourselves and our neighbors. I don't think that there's anything that you could say that would mess that up. But I love that you even thought to ask the question, though.
Well, thank you so much for engaging with the question. Really appreciate it. There are, many compliments to you in the chat, but also many questions. So Patience is monitoring that. What do you have in there, Patience, for Dr. Hardy?
Okay, lots of questions. First of all, this Wednesday, Neighbors on Call is hosting a screening of the film Capturing the Flag, which is about a group of friends who traveled to Cumberland County, which they bill as a poster child for voter suppression. Could you give us a little historical background on why they're saying that Cumberland County is a poster child for voter suppression?
Well, so let's see, the shorter version of this. Well, so when we got in trouble with in December with the gerrymandering, they talked about how, you know, the Supreme Court said that they were suppressing the African-American vote, quote, with razor sharp precision or something. It was really, really very, very specific. And like, for example, the seat that I'm in has always been held. I'm sorry?
That was surgical precision, Dr. Hardy.
Surgical precision. Actually, Michael Michael is a lifelong resident of Cumberland County and would actually be very good to give this answer. Michael, can you tell them the historical piece of this? Michael is awesome.
Yes.
I would never have made it this far without my fabulous campaign manager, Michael Haywood. Michael, tell them.
All right, so in reference to capturing the flag, Cumberland County, the Republicans of Cumberland County, let me be specific there when I say this.
Right.
They went out of their way to try to keep people from voting. One, they reduced the number of early voting poll sites. I think at 1 year it was down to 4. So there was that. There was there's the county board of elections. There would be a person who would show up and challenge absentee ballots. And he would also go and challenge people's whether they should be an actual voter or not. So voter rolls would get purged. And so these were some of the tactics that that the Republicans would do, and because of those tactics is why we got the unfortunate nickname that we ended up with. So
even in during the primary season, we had to we sat in on a county board of elections meeting where they were trying to decide whether or not to open Smith Rec Center for early voting. And Smith Rec Center is in the middle of a predominantly Black, lower income community. It is the hub of life in that community. It's right across the street from where I work at Fayetteville State University, and they voted to not open it. I mean, there's a lot of older people there, a lot of lower income folks there. There's not a lot of good access to public transit there. So closing, and actually one of the people on the county board said, well, if we open that one, then we're unnecessarily favoring one particular political party. And someone said, and if you close it,
demographic, ma'am.
Demographic, right? And they said, well, if you close it, then you're unfairly biasing it against that grid. So it had to go to the state level in order for us to be able to keep it open. And so we were encouraging people. It doesn't matter where you live, because in early vote you can vote anywhere. We kept telling people, no matter where you vote, please go to Smith Rec and cast your ballot, because we need this space to stay open. Because there's a lot of folks here that would be absolutely disenfranchised if they close Smith Rec for voting locations. So that's some of the reason why we are so important in this whole electoral process in Cumberland County.
There are a couple questions about the military component of your district. Is the military base part of your district, and are there a lot of military families in your district?
No and yes. So Jason Kane is running out of Harnett County, and technically the base is partly in his district. But Fort Bragg is right there. Pope Air Force Base is right there, and so it's all. I mean, you can't live in this area and not claim it as your own. My older brother was in the 82nd, So, but there are lots and lots of active duty and veteran folks who live in this district. Some folks come for the military and they stay once they get out and make it home, because it is Fayetteville is called America's hometown, and it feels like that. And so people stay for a very, very long time, even after their military service is over. But lots of military folks here.
Okay, and similarly, what percentage of voters in your district are Democratic, Republican, and unaffiliated?
Well, I like to say it's a race to the middle, because my opponent and I have an almost equal number of registered people in our particular party. It's almost like a 33 split, because there's so many unaffiliated voters. So it's really going to be a race to the middle. Like, that's why these calls that you guys are making are absolutely essential, because that's where we're going to pick up the majority of our voting. That's how we're going to win, is pulling those folks over to the left.
Okay. Well, this kind of ties in with what you just said, but how are you able to reach voters and potential donors since you can't knock on doors? The fact that we can't knock on doors is just, it's awful. But we do phone banks, text banks. People have done postcards for us. Whenever we can be out, like this past weekend, there was a series of community groups that were giving out food and doing voter registration. And so some candidates were able to go out there and just wave at folks, just anything to be able to engage with the voters right now. But it really comes down to things like Zoom events. We actually have one next week on the 22nd on women in politics. And we're super excited about that,
because it's Jenny Deviere, Margaret Dixon, and Diane Parfit, the latter two of whom served in the General Assembly. And Jenny is the wife to Senator Kirk Deviere, who's in the Senate, and we must send him back there. So we've been doing Zoom events, phone banks, postcards, anything that we can do to safely distance, but still meet with folks where they are.
Okay. Your opponent, who Michael told us is Diane Wheatley. Could you tell us a little bit about her and what she stands for? We know we won't talk about her in our phone banks for you, but it's just, sometimes it's kind of inspiring for us to know who your opponent is and what she stands for.
Well, I like to say she's a woman that's not a fan of a woman's right to choose. And I don't understand that. I know that there are, varying beliefs around these things, but I am solidly in this camp and she is solidly not in this camp. She has gone on record as saying that she only believes that a woman should be able to have an abortion if she, and this is her, illegitimately has a potential threat to her own life carrying the baby to term. So not an instances of rape or incest, you still have to carry that baby to term. And so in that way, we are completely diametrically opposed to one another. She likes to say that she supports Medicaid expansion, but she really does not, because she always has this caveat, well, as long as the federal government doesn't renege on paying for it, and so you're either for it or you're not, Diane, and there's no cost there again. And she and I actually had this debate during the primary, and we explained, she said, well, I want to know who are these people? Who are these people that need Medicaid? We believe in work in this state. And I said, well, in my field, we call these folks the working poor and the middle class. And there are folks who don't have employer-sponsored health care, and they're working maybe 3 and 4 jobs to pull together an 80-hour paycheck, but no one job is giving them health care. So these are people that probably work harder than most of us and are yet missing this very important benefit that could make the difference for their families in terms of health and economics. So she's identified herself in her literature and her yard signs as a Trump conservative. She is extremely, extremely far to the right. And I really, this is not hyperbole or campaign speak. I worry about what the General Assembly is going to look like if Diane Wheatley gets elected. I really do.
Okay. There have been I guess, with regard to the voter suppression issue, there have been a couple questions about the early voting locations, times, and dates in your district. Are you happy with them? Do you think they're fair, they're enough? And do you feel like people will feel comfortable coming out to vote in person early, given the COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah, actually we are. They have expanded the number of days. They have some longer hours. They have like my own polling location here in Linden. I received a letter weeks ago saying that they were going to move it to another location that was larger so that there could be social distancing, because it was in this little tiny really tiny little firehouse up the street, and there's just no way to social distance in that space. So I think they really are doing a great job of making sure that it's accessible and safe. And we are telling people that. We're encouraging people to do early vote, even if they want to go ahead and get their absentee ballot, but they want to take it and drop it off during early vote. We tell them, absolutely, we have I'm voting in person in early vote, and I am currently working remotely from the university right now because I have asthma, and so the university is like, no, you stay home this semester. So I'm teaching synchronously right now, but even I am going to go and vote in person for early vote, because it really is, I believe, very safe. And I think the locations, the hours, the spaces that they're using, when they do have to move them, they're not moving them far away, so it doesn't become a challenge for folks to get there. I'm actually really, really pleased with the way that we're responding to COVID during the election.
Okay, great. There's one question. How will the presidential race, how do you think the presidential race will affect your race and turnout for your race?
Well, we're hoping, see, and that's the thing, right? So we're thinking that people are so fired up for the presidential that folks who have not voted in a really long time are going to come out. Younger people who maybe didn't register before are seeing that issues that they care about are up for grabs. They're on the ballot and they're going to be motivated to do stuff. The concern is that folks vote the entire ballot. And so, I mean, because everyone's going to go president, governor. There it is. It's all you need. And it's not all you need. If you believe in Joe Biden and his vision, you got to send Cal Cunningham to the Senate. You know, if you believe in Governor Cooper, you got to send me to the House. So, because without the legislative branch being there to support the executive branch, we can't get anything done. So the concern is that we'll get lots and lots of turnout, but they will stop and get ballot fatigue about halfway down. And there are so many important races. There are judges' races that are on the back bottom portion. I mean, mine is on the, you can see the sample ballot, and I'm on the back in the center column, but at the top. Like, it's a lot. We have one of the longest, I think that someone's been the third longest ballot in the country. Like, it's, and so we just want people, if you're gonna come out anyway, if you're gonna be there anyway, vote the entire ballot. So we've been encouraging people, start at the bottom and work your way up, because we know you're not going to leave without voting those two top races. So start with the bottom races and work your way up the ballot. So I think it will drive turnout. I just hope it also drives people to stay in until the entire ballot is finished.
Okay. And that could be one of the roles we play with our phone banking, to make sure
Please.
they know your name and know to vote for you. How important are financial donations for your campaign, and what do campaigns do with the funds when there's no need to print materials for door-to-door canvassing?
Oh, well, I'm so glad that you asked this. Okay, so this is huge, and it's actually, you guys' questions are so awesome. It's a question no one ever really asks. They just go, send her money, she needs it. And I know voters wonder, what do you need it for, right? So when we are out canvassing, we print out these things called palm cards. They have our name, our face, few bullet points we can give to people for their own stuff. But that same thing has to go out in the mail. So for example, and I promise y'all I did not stage it. She did not tell me she was going to ask this question, but I just happen to have mail pieces here. So these are going into mailboxes. Can you all see that? And they cost money to produce and money to mail. And now the Democratic Party, fortunately, is paying for these kinds of things. But, you know, and I appreciate that, but there's a lot of funds that go toward that. There's funds that go toward yard signs. And yard signs are really, really important. Oh, is that a new one, Michael?
Yes, ma'am. Came in the mail today.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one yet. Oh, that's awesome. That is so awesome. Look at there. I love it. So those things, right? So yard signs are super important because they have such impact. You can put them all over the place. We use it for you know, ads that get produced that, or, you know, for digital ads, or how about this? I write thank you letters to everybody who donates to the campaign. If you donate $1, you're getting a thank you letter from me, hand signed, hand folded, but the paper, that costs money. That we, you know, the letterhead, the stamps. I bought 2 rolls of stamps the other day, support the USPS, and it was $110 to send, you know, thank you letters. And so those things, the website, you know, we want to have a website, but it costs money to have the domain hosted and things like that. So what I've learned in the time that I've been running is that money equals messaging. So it really is about, the more resources we have available to us financially, the greater the reach that we can have in terms of meeting with people. And that is much more important now than it has ever been. You know, digital ads, that costs money. Television commercials, those cost money. But those are the only ways that I can get in someone's house and say, listen, I am what you want. So it's a great question. It means everything. But here's the thing too. Big donations are great. but big donations are rare. The average contribution to our campaign is around $35 to $45, and that means more than you realize. So if you are inclined to give to my campaign or anyone else's campaign, don't think it has to be a huge amount in order to make a difference. It really can be, if you did $20 a month throughout the life of a campaign, that would help a lot. Or $20 one time. You'd be surprised how far that will go in helping us get our message out.
Okay. How is voter registration going in your district? I mean, there's been some concern that COVID-19 might affect voter registrations. Have you seen an increase in voter registrations, or have things been slower than you anticipated?
Well, we've seen some community groups do some voter registration drives, like the thing last weekend where they were doing food distribution. They also did it in conjunction with some 501 groups that were doing voter registration. And there's a whole bunch of those going on the closer we get. But people can also register online. And so I think the number of outdoor events, if you will, for voter registration has probably collapsed because we're encouraging folks to go check your registration. If you aren't registered, do it online, or some folks will probably do it same day. But I think that there's definitely been an uptick. I mean, I saw some data the other day, about 2 or 3 days ago, that over 750,000 ballots, absentee ballots, have already been requested, and that is a huge number. So I'm thinking that folks are registering, requesting the ballot, using ballot tracks to track it when it comes, to track it when it goes back. So I think technology is actually is helping with all of that stuff now more than ever before.
Dr. Hardy,
Yes, sir.
Can I cut in for a moment?
Sure.
I did receive some information today that I haven't been able to relay to you yet.
Okay.
In Cumberland County, 1,900 absentee ballots in Cumberland County alone have been
Wow.
turned in, have been received by the Board of Elections.
Wow. Have been received already.
Have been received already.
Wow. See, so election day started for us already here in North Carolina. That is awesome.
Yes, I said this is not requested. These are the ones that have been returned and received.
Wow.
By the Board of Elections.
You guys, I might already be winning. Who knows?
Well,
that is awesome.
Well, Anne wants to know, are there online debates or other occasions where you and your opponent would be on screen together? She says she can't imagine that someone who hears you both would not be incredibly impressed by your policy points, knowledge, goodness, and energy.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Anne. No, they have not, their camp has not asked us for anything like that. And we, I mean, if they were to ask, I would absolutely do it. But, you know, we're taking the same approach with this general election that we took in the primary. We were asked over and over again, you know, why are you running against an incumbent? And we would say the same thing. We're not running against Mr. Floyd. We're running for the people of House District 43. So, you know, I have no interest in spending my time battling Diane Wheatley, you know, when these points, her points are, we know exactly where she stands and we know where I stand. What is there to talk about? I think it would be a bunch of spin and rhetoric if she and I were to have a debate, and it's unnecessary. What I'm focused on is the people of the district and the people of North Carolina, because the legislative actions I take don't just affect House District 43, they have an impact statewide. And so I am very interested in doing whatever I can to give a voice to the people whose voices have been marginalized as a result of who they love, how they love, where they live, you know, where you prize one kind of work over a different kind of work. I don't value that. I value all work. And I think that it should be paid well, and people should be able to have benefits where they can take care of their families. If she wants to debate me on that, I welcome it. But I would rather spend my time talking to you guys and to voters, because, you know, that's what's more important to me. But she hasn't asked, and we're not gonna, but if she asks, we will absolutely say yes.
Okay, fabulous. This sounds like a kind of a open-ended question, but you can narrow it down. Just what is the most important message you would like us to give the voters we'll be calling?
Oh, that is good. And this cannot be overstated. This is the most important election in our lifetimes. And that, again, not hyperbole, not conjecture, not talking points. There is no path to victory for the presidency that doesn't come through North Carolina. The governor and I and Kirk Deviere and Francis Jackson, we were all on a fundraising call the other day on Zoom, and the governor said, like, no president in the last, God, it was some ridiculous number of years, has won the presidency without winning North Carolina. And he said that Chuck Schumer, when he sees Cal Cunningham, says that's our 50th senator. Like, we have an opportunity in North Carolina to literally change the face of the political landscape in the country. And I tell people all the time, as goes North Carolina, so goes the United States. We can take over the White House. We can take over the Senate. We can get more seats in the House in DC. We can change the state legislature, put our governor back in office. I mean, there is just so much good that comes from this one moment. And so I would ask people to not take this moment for granted. This is not like every other election. People's personhood is on the ballot here this time. I mean, in terms of women's reproductive health, issues around race relations have become absolutely ridiculous. Communities, people are scared, but fear shouldn't drive what we're trying to do. We know we can do better. And it just takes a few minutes and a few bubbles, and you can literally change the entire landscape politically for people across the country from just your voting booth. This cannot be said enough. So if there's one message to them when you call them, tell them you cannot sit this one out. You cannot sit this one out.
Okay,
It's as simple as that.
We've reached the end of our time here, and I think that's a good question. That's a good answer to end on.
Oh, good.
Can't sit this one out. Okay, Amanda, did I overlook any question in the chat that I should have asked?
No, I don't think so. I think that pretty much covers most things. One question, I think someone did ask about what Dr. Hardy's campaign is doing digitally on social media and Facebook. That's the only thing.
Okay.
Oh, well, we have a very robust social media presence. And now, thanks to the wonderful 3 collegiate interns we've had this summer, I am on Instagram. So I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and we have a website. And we're really using those very robustly, again, to advertise things, everything from our events to our endorsements that we get. I used, before my actual office hours started back up in August at the university, I had a weekly segment called Office Hours with Dr. Hardy, where we would log on and just talk about whatever, just like office hours are. And so that was a lot of fun to do. And I actually want to start that back up. That would be awesome. But I don't know if we have time between now and election day to really get that going. But yeah, you can find us on every form of social media that there is.
Okay, well, we will follow you and amplify your message. Okay, back to you, Becca and Susan.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Hardy. Now, if you have anything else you've just been dying to say, please feel free. You got, one more shot if you want to say anything else. Otherwise, we will let you go.
Well, I'm first of all, I'm so bummed that I'm seeing things. People are talking to me in the chat, and I haven't been able to see it. Suzanne asked some really awesome questions. What values did you learn from your parents and grandparents? When did you become a Democrat? The womb. Why did you choose social work, and where did you go to grad school? And I just want to answer all of those because that's a really great way to sort of close us out. So my family's legacy is a legacy of service. My father is a retired police officer with the DC Police. Before he was a police officer, he signed up with the Marine Corps and did 2 tours in Vietnam. Both of my brothers were in the military as well. My younger brother was an MP in the Marine Corps, and my older brother was in the 82nd here at Fort Bragg. I wanted to be in the military. My father was adamantly against that. So So I became a social worker, which he was also adamantly against, but I fought back. And so, so we've been giving, my mom was a federal agent up until the time she passed several years ago. And she used to say she was the only skirt at the table. She was a woman and a woman of color, and there was no predecessor for her in the role that she had as an agent. And they tried everything they could to keep her from becoming an agent, because she didn't have a college degree. And so they did all these things to try and stop her. And little 5 foot tall, my mom gave them all a run for their money and wound up becoming the special agent in charge of the Eastern region for the Department of the Interior, and then an agent with the State Department. And so, I mean, she was amazing. My dad is amazing. And their whole lives have been about giving back. And so when I was trying to figure out what's my role in all of this, I didn't know that social work was a job. I was just volunteering at homeless shelters and doing things in the community for children in underprivileged neighborhoods, until my mom said one day, well, you know, you could be a social worker. And I thought, what? And so I went to school, and that's where it started. So I got my BSW and my PhD in social work are from Morgan State University, which is the HBCU up in Maryland. And my MSW is from the Ohio State University. So so from my family, the values that I learned, did somebody say boo? Was that Michael? Shut up, Michael. So but I learned that service and selflessness, it's your responsibility as a human on the planet. And so, you know, it's what I've done my entire life. This is just another opportunity for me to serve at a greater level. And it means everything to me that you guys don't even know me, and yet you'd be willing to donate any of your time at all to helping me win this thing. And I promise that when I get there, I will make you proud that you did this work. I guarantee it.
Oh, that's just terrific. Thank you so much, Dr. Hardy. We just, you see the chat, everyone is just bursting with joy because they think you're wonderful. Someday we'll all be in person. We'll hug or whatever, because this is a lot of warm feelings going on tonight. And people just clearly can't wait to help you win, which is going to lead me to saying, knock folks, now's a good chance for you to sign up for a phone bank. We have a bunch on our website, but this slide, not that you can really read it on the fly, but you can see we've got 5 phone banks on the calendar for Dr. Hardy. So please sign up. I'm doing the one tomorrow night. I hope to see you there. I think we've got a good crowd, but please go sign up for those. Now, someone earlier made a reference to the film Capturing the Flag, and we know, of course, you're going to be busy with phone banking, but if you've got time to squeeze in a film, please join us Wednesday night for a screening of Capturing the Flag. It's about 4 volunteers working against voter suppression in Cumberland County, which is the county we've been talking about tonight, in 2016. The panel for this will include Reverend Barber, Representative Deb Butler, and Seth Morris. Should be a really interesting program. You can register for this event on our website. NOC is one of the partner organizations for this event. Thank you all for being here. Now, this is the end of the official part of the program, but like we said, we're going to come back in just a minute and shift into our after Zoom gathering. I've been wanting to call it an après Zoom. So we'll have an après Zoom. So just sit tight for a minute. We're going to have this slide here to mark the end of the formal business part of the meeting. But if you can't stay in, then that's fine. But otherwise, hang on and we'll be chatting afterwards.
Ms. Blunt, can I say something real quick before you go?
Sure can.
Someone had made mention of asking about her social media. So what I've done, I've dropped her social media link, or social media Facebook link in the chat. I dropped her website in the chat and a donation link as well, all in there. So
that is great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for adding that in, because we all clearly have fallen in love with Dr. Hardy tonight. So thanks a bunch. Okay, so we're just going to switch gears in 5 seconds, and we'll be back, and it'll be party time. Thank you, everybody. And Dr. Hardy and Michael, you are both welcome to stay too if you want.
Yeah.
I have to switch into mommy mode now. I'm sorry.
Okay. I saw your dog's tail walking along behind you.
Yeah, 2 of them. They were That's why I had to turn off the camera just now because they were going nuts.
They will
But
be
I'm
very-
sorry I can't stay with you guys, but thank you all so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Y'all have a good one. Thank you for having us.
All
Thank
right.
you so
Bye-bye.
much.